Welcome back to The Reluctant Healer. And, I love sharing this story. It was a very important part of our sort of relationship history. And, sort of one of the first relationships we tackled together. And it was very important.
So one of the things I think that was important for me, we're talking about my dad, but we're also talking about a new relationship starting between us. And there was some annoyance. I was annoyed my dad was moving in with me. There was all this stuff going on with me and my dad. But when you're talking about getting together with someone and starting a relationship and starting a life with them, it's also important to step back and see what that person is like. And even though I was fairly annoyed with you for bringing him down here, it told me a lot about you and your view on family. And that was actually really important. So I might have been annoyed about that specific situation, but I realized something, that you don't back down when family is in trouble. You don't back down when there's a challenge. And for me, as somebody who had a little girl, that was really important. So I realized family was really important to you. Sometimes those relationships were more critical for you to dig into and want to heal than they were for me, because there were things that I had pushed, not just pushed out, but I was clear. They had been so toxic that I didn't want them in. And you were like, no, let's do this. And it was a love-hate thing.
Well, and sometimes people are so toxic that you need to push them out. So I'm not, even though I've been accused of being Pollyanna-ish, although Pollyanna is my favorite movie.
Yeah, he is.
I know there's a reality that you become like the people you spend time with. But often people eliminate people from their lives or ban people from their lives, and nobody knows, well, it could be their brain.
Right.
And if you don't look, how would you ever know? And once you balance their brain, often, not always, but often their relationships are better. They have more empathy, more forethought, better judgment, better impulse control, all of those things that going into making us who we are. And so he teaches an all-day seminar at church, and we're sort of feeling good about ourselves that he is progressing, and we really like that. And I think it's at that point I begin to meet your sisters. That was yet another part to the story. We'll tell that story another time.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
But you begin to think about, how do all these brains interact with each other? And no family therapist I know, outside of the ones here at Amen Clinics, and a couple of my friends, like Dr. Henslin, Earl Henslin, who's in Brea, Southern California, they just never think about the brain as it relates to relationships.
Right.
And so now, in the beginning of our relationship, we actually begin to put the brain in the center of it. Scan you, scan your dad, then I scan your mom and your uncle, who are working together. They both have terrible ADD. Balancing their ADD, they stop fighting with each other. Your mom just recently sold her business. When you balance the brain, people can get along better. And then a couple of years later, your dad actually gets sick with a medical illness.
Yeah, it was, so it's interesting. So he's doing so well. And like I said before, it didn't just all get better, right? We had to work. I mean, there was a lot of work that went into the relationship getting better. And so there were ups and downs, and there were some, weird things about, you don't just blend your life with someone after, 36 or 37 years, and all of a sudden it's just all better. So we were working on a lot of stuff and letting a lot of stuff go. And he was doing so much better, though, physically. His health was so much better. And all of a sudden, he was diagnosed with leukemia, a form of leukemia. And it was pretty crazy. He had to start going through chemo, and so now he's sick again. But it wasn't Alzheimer's disease, right? I mean, it was something completely unrelated, completely different. And so he got pretty sick. And through that process, one thing I did notice through that process is it affected his brain again. So, when he would not feel well, when he would go through chemo, when his blood count was low, when his hemoglobin was low, stuff like that he would slip back into some of his old behaviors. And fortunately, it was actually you that pointed it out to me. I would get so irritated. And you're like, wait a second. He's not actually getting oxygen to his brain. So that would actually be helpful because I could step back and go, oh, that's true. So it's the nurse in me could put that together. The biological thing I could actually deal with. The just sort of being a jerk thing, not so easy to deal with, right? So
although they may be closely related.
Well, that's what I mean. I could deal with that. So, because I can remember being in the hospital and people getting ICU psychosis and people having reactions to medications, that I can deal with all day long. So when I would hear that, it was easy. It was easier. And so when he finally got this progressed pretty bad, it was pretty bad, and he couldn't live. He actually for a while was living independently again. So that was pretty wild. He wanted to live.
While.
Yeah, for a couple of years. He lived independently again, which was he wanted to, which was interesting. So we had to move him back in with us, and he was living in one of our bedrooms downstairs because he couldn't climb stairs. And eventually we had to have hospice come. And it was so interesting because I remember having such a hard time. I started to get physical manifestations, and I didn't know why. I never get headaches, like ever. I was having these massive headaches, and I felt sort of nauseous. I was not feeling well at all, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was getting these like very anxious, not mad at him, just like anxious feelings when he would moan and he was going through certain physical issues, and I could not figure it out. And I got to tell you, hospice nurses, God bless you. You guys are an amazing breed of people. Because as a trauma nurse, I'm a hard charging, let's do something. And so when I couldn't do something, I just sort of freaked out. And so it was the hospice nurse that pulled me aside, and she goes, I was like, I don't feel well. I can't, I don't know what's going on. I just can't. I was feeling really blah, like I was going to throw up or pass out or something. And which is weird because I'm used to seeing literally blood and guts all day long, brain tissue and fractured skulls. And she pulled me aside. I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. I just feel so awful. And she pulled me aside. She said, yeah, it makes perfect sense. She said, you're used to always doing something. And now is a time when you need to not do something. Now is a time when you need to let him go with grace. And I literally felt really sick for a second. And then I was like, oh my God, she's right. That's just such a hard thing to grasp, letting someone go with grace and with dignity. And that's what hospice nurses do. It was such a weird thing to experience.
So this man that you were disconnected from and held a lot of animosity toward came back, had a better brain, you guys had a better relationship, you're able to heal one of the biggest hurts of anyone's life is their relationship with their father. And the day he died, he asked me to go to Taco Bell and get him an enchilada. And I'm like, no, why am I going to accelerate your death? And
it was so funny. I'm like, and your book had just come out,
Change your brain, change your body.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, you're going to have to go cloak and dagger. For sure. I mean, if I'm on my deathbed, give me what I want. We knew he was dying, so.
So I went and got him an enchilada, and then he died.
So, but I want to talk about that day in the next episode because it was really an amazing day. It was actually a miraculous, beautiful day, which sounds really weird for the day that someone dies. But that day
people who've been around people who died, that doesn't sound weird at all. Stay
yeah,
with
I
us.
need to talk about it. It was so wild.
Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.